Well, we are back. Bob Odell with Root Source, Trey Graham from First Melissa, a church in Melissa, Texas. Where exactly is Melissa, Texas?
That's a good question. We are in the northern suburbs of Dallas. So the joke is that Dallas is going to run into Oklahoma.
Yes.
So we're on the route for that.
Yes, I guess that's a bedroom community
Very much so.
for the Dallas area. It's pretty up there. I've driven up on, was it Central Expressway, becomes 75,
Correct.
which heads up. And,
Correct.
Yeah. So we talked about your early years, your call into the pastorate, and now you started First Melissa Church. You've been there for 6 years. How did Israel come into play?
In 2008, a member of our church gave me a gift of a trip to Israel.
What a gift.
It was a beautiful gift. And so I had never been to Israel before, and the Lord gave me a blessing when a church member again gave me a trip. And so my dad joined me. He paid his way and joined me on the trip. And so the two of us came as roommates and went his first time in Israel and my first time in Israel, joined a tour with another pastor, and began to see the Word of God come to life, see the places that I'd read about all those years.
People describe their experience, with Israel for the first time. Can you recall was there a particular site that touched you? Or, how did you sort of react to this experience?
It was emotional. It was eye-opening. We use a lot of cliches when we talk about touring Israel, things like the Bible goes from 2D to 3D, or it goes from black and white to color, and all those things are true. They're just not enough. They don't say it well enough. And again, my calling is to be a Bible teacher, so you get to visit the places you've been talking about all these years. And I took over 4,000 pictures the first time I came to Israel, because I didn't know if I'd ever come back.
Whoa.
So I used them in all of my sermons. Every one of our sermons has a PowerPoint show with lots of photos and graphs and scriptures and charts. And all the years before that, I had to use other people's stuff. And then I got to start using my own things, my own materials.
You mean, so just like when you would do a lesson on David and Goliath, you would try to, just get a picture of that part of Israel.
Of course. Maps, geography, yes.
Okay. And so now
it's my picture. Yes. Right. And the smooth stones that I picked up at the Valley of Elah. So coming here for the first time was a treat, because I began to see that the Word of God is undeniable. People wonder if it happened some country far away and it happened so long ago, and you begin to doubt some people how true it is or how relevant it is. Even if you believe it's true, it has nothing to do with my life today, some would argue. And I say, no way. When you visit Israel, it is totally apparent that the Word of God is accurate. It is really understandable. Jesus used a lot of very simple language. Now, it might be foreign to a 21st century American audience, but when he talks about a millstone, that's not unusual. When he talks about go the extra mile, if he talks about a city set on a hill, those are easily understandable things when you walk in the land and you see what he's talking about. It might need a little explanation to our modern audience. It didn't need explanation to his audience.
It sounds like one of the things that you enjoy in developing your sermon is trying to bring it to life.
Of course.
Pictures, maps. I love that kind of stuff personally. So you were already talking, in the first 6 years, you were already talking about Israel, of course. You're reading the Bible. Sure. You're teaching out of the Bible. Tell us about the impact that trip to Israel had, and how might your sermons have changed?
Well, in many ways, I get to say, let me show you where I've been let me show you what I've seen, rather than it being distant or abstract. It's personal to me. And so people ask about my first trip to Israel, and did you love it, and did you meet people, and did you see what you thought you would see? And the answer is all of that, yes. And even on the first trip, I met friends who still are friends today. And then later on with the additional trips that I've taken, you meet new friends and you develop relationships, and one friend introduces you to another friend. And
when was your second trip to Israel?
I think 2009, the next year.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
And now today you take you have tours from your church.
Mm-hmm.
Was that when did that start? Was 2009 a tour?
I think it was.
Okay.
Yes. And
so you're looking to share this experience.
Sure. Again, as a Bible teacher, there's no better place to do it than in the land of Israel. So, of course, when I thought I would like to do this, I would like to lead a tour, and the one that I went on as a guest, of course, I observed and I liked some things that they did, and I copied that. I changed some things that I would have done differently, and just began to learn. And I was invited back, I believe, in 2010 to speak at an event in Israel, speak at an event that the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus put on.
Nice. How did you? Okay.
Josh Reinstein is a friend, and he's the director of that organization, and invited me. And I believe that's the event where I met Gidon Ariel, was at that event.
So how did you meet Josh?
Well, I met someone before Josh because, like everybody else in the world, you Google things and you read organizations and read websites and newspapers. And so I ended up emailing with a certain person, and they, based upon hearing my questions and my interest level, said, I think you need to meet someone. And they connected me with Josh Reinstein.
Nice.
And Josh, of course, lived in Israel full time at that point, but he had lived in Plano earlier in his life. And so we had a Dallas connection, and he's a little bit younger than me, but we're close to the same age. And so Josh and I developed a friendship, and he's really someone who's connected me to a lot of friends in Israel, and ended up inviting me to that event.
Wow. So about Josh and the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus, just for background, I've sort of gone back and looked at the history of Jewish-Christian relations, and I think that is a milestone event.
Definitely.
It began to open up and legitimize, I think, the interaction between Christians and Jews. Christine Darg, for instance, that we've interviewed, she sees that as a major turning point. So you were there, and you got connected into that in about 2010. So that's probably when you met Gidon. I think there's two tracks from here. One is I want to ask you about the changes that have happened in your church, and the other is about the changes that have happened in your relationships here. But I know something about you that I want to get into the story here. You are not just a pastor of First Melissa. You also have a radio show, and actually a couple of radio shows. Tell us about what you do today and when you started these things.
Great. I've been the pastor of First Melissa since 2002. As we've mentioned, we have a daily teaching program on the radio, a preaching, teaching program. It's heard Monday through Friday mornings. The station is called The Word, 100.7 FM. It's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we have a daily teaching show, and then we have a weekly talk radio show. The teaching show is called Faith Walk. The teaching show, again, Monday through Friday, called Faith Walk. The talk radio program is called Smart Talk, and that's Sunday afternoons at 4 o'clock, same station. And so it is a talk radio interview program, and so I talk to a lot of people in Israel or about Israel on the talk radio show.
Did this show start before or after your visit to Israel, your first visit?
Both of those shows started before I came to Israel.
Okay.
So they're not Israel focused, they're Bible focused and Word of God focused, but once I come to Israel, I meet a lot of new people and begin to meet more people, and so a lot of my guests on the talk show
So you'd meet someone interesting, and then ask if you could do an interview.
Or the other way around. I do an interview with them before I ever meet them because I read about them in the newspaper or read their books and have them on the show and then meet them later.
So to talk about some of the people that you've interviewed, once you went to Israel, did that encourage you to do more interviews?
Of course.
And
our talk radio show is news and politics and current events in Texas, in the United States, and in Israel. And so a lot of politicians in Texas that people would know. Ted Cruz, probably the most well-known. He's been on our program many times. There are other people. James Langford is a U.S. Senator from Oklahoma, true follower of Jesus, and a lot of other people. And then in Israel, politicians like Danny Danon, Danny Ayalon, Dov Lipman, just a lot of people who served in Knesset or served in the Israeli government. Other thinkers, Gil Troy, David Horowitz, Gil Hoffman, writers and thinkers.
Jerusalem Post. Yeah.
Jerusalem Post. A lot of people from the Times of Israel like Haviv Gur and David Horowitz. Many rabbis that I've met in Israel. Dov Lipman is a rabbi as well as a member of Knesset. Jeremy Gimpel, Ilan Adler, Betzalel Friedman. Lots of people who are living in Israel. Many of them were Americans who made Aliyah. And so they have a sense of they can talk about life in America and then their life after they moved to Israel.
When you have a microphone to offer, boy, you can meet a lot of people.
As you know yourself.
Okay, so the message of this show is start your own talk radio show in your own locale, and then you can meet all kinds of people. It's got to have been fun and eye-opening, and I've heard you on your show. You're a very smooth. You make people feel comfortable. You really do.
I appreciate that. We do have a lot of fun, and again, the name of the show is Smart Talk, and so that's the promise that we make: is we're going to bring you smart people, and we're going to talk to them, and we're going to learn from them, and whether it's politics or news or Bible or current events, we're going to talk to smart people and see what they can teach us.
So, let's talk about the relationships. You've mentioned a number of people now, and how has your interaction with Israel, you came to see the places.
Right.
Tell us about what it's like now when you come and what is the process that God is taking you through in
life is about relationships. First of all, it's a relationship with God. Church family is about relationships. Relationships with God first and other believers second. And you can go to a church as a place, but it's better, it's more powerful to go to a church about relationships with the Lord first and with other believers second. Visiting Israel, you can do it as focused on a place, but you can also do it focused on relationships. Mm-hmm. And you learn more when you interact with people. I promise on our trips that you're going to learn ancient Israel and modern Israel, because too many Christians in America are guilty of thinking that Israel stopped when the Bible stopped. It's not true. It's a modern country. It's 70 years old, founded in 1948, and they deal with all the modern issues of politics and transportation and pollution and construction and the neighbors around Israel who are not always friendly to them. So I want our folks to learn ancient Israel so they will know their Bible better and understand their Bible better. But I want them to learn modern Israel too. Friends that they will make, people that they meet on our trips. They get to go back and they start listening to their podcasts and watching their programs and reading their articles. And it's sort of a continuing education once you go home.
That's beautiful at two levels. The first is that you have a smile on your face when you say that your people come back from a tour and catch somebody's podcast in Israel. Sure. You have a smile on your face. You're not. It's beautiful because you're not trying to build the wall around the understanding. Sure. For your folks. And I don't think everyone has that heart. But the other thing is, it was built right in. I think that something is so important about you said ancient Israel and modern Israel. I'm sure you have met other pastors who do not consider the modern Israel to be relevant at all. How did you come to this openness to consider modern Israel as a continuation of ancient Israel?
Well, the short answer is because God's covenant with the Jewish people is everlasting. So it's not finished. So the God who chose the Jewish people, who chose the land of Israel and the people of Israel, that covenant is ongoing. It's everlasting. And
did you always believe that?
I always believed it, but I hadn't experienced it. Again, that's the difference in going to a place and then having relationships in a place. You can go to a church and have no relationships. It's just not very powerful in your spiritual walk. You can go to Israel and stay on your tour bus and never meet the people. But on our trips, we bring guests either during the daytime or in the evenings. We bring guests to come and visit with folks.
Jewish guests, Orthodox Jewish.
Almost always, yes.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be, but almost always, yes. Yeah. Orthodox Jewish guests who come to visit with our folks so there can be dialogue, so they can ask questions, so they can learn about life in Israel. We call our trips Israel by the Book. That's the title. It's actually the website, israelbythebook.com. That's the title of what we do because we want to bring our Bible and learn from it and use it as the guidebook of the tours. And so there can be a focus on ancient Israel. There has to be. But there can be a focus on modern Israel because the covenant is still alive.
Now, you may remember that in 2018, in spring of 2018, on the 70th anniversary of the refounding of Israel, Gidon and Trey worked together to run a Root Source tour, the 70th anniversary tour.
Yes.
And you essentially led the Christian. It was led by a Christian and an Orthodox Jew,
right?
And you talked about the Christian themes when appropriate, and Gidon talked about the Jewish themes. How did that? How did you? It
was beautiful, and I don't know of any other tours that do it that way. And most of my tours are not done that way. But it was a great treat to do that, and maybe we'll do it again in the future. Mm-hmm. And it was a chance for this dialogue that I talked about to be a week long, not an hour long.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay, so speaking of that dialogue, I'm sure you have pastoral colleagues who would jolt at the idea of you allowing a Jew who does not see Yeshua as the Messiah to speak to your group, to have the floor, to have the whatever. So again, how did you come to that, and how do you? How would you answer a pastor who says, "What in the world are you doing that for?"
That's a good question. It starts with honesty. We're very open up front. Whether a guest comes to speak at a special event in our church or a guest comes to speak to our tour groups in Israel, we're very honest and open up front. We are followers of Jesus. We believe he is the Son of God. We believe he is Messiah. My friends, my Orthodox Jewish friends, are followers of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but they're not convinced Jesus is Messiah. We're not going to hide that. We're not going to deny that, but we're just not going to fight over that. We're going to be honest at the beginning and say, what can we learn from each other? What can we learn as we talk? If Jesus came to fulfill the law, as he said, he didn't come to abolish it. Mm-hmm. The Old Testament is completely relevant for modern Christians today. And the life that Jesus lived on the earth was very similar in a lot of ways to the Orthodox Jewish lifestyle today. So the better we learn that life, the better we can understand Jesus. So it's not a negative. It's not something that we should hide from. It's something we embrace. Again, being honest at the beginning, we are followers of Jesus and we're not denying that.
Well, when we come back, I want to ask you about how your church has changed and how you see the relationship between Christians and Jews changing. So Thanks for being with us on this segment, and I hope to see you back on the next one. Until then, shalom.